Well, good evening, everyone. I am Karen Beverly from Money Making Maryland, and I'm so excited to be your host for tonight's live webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Your facilitators this evening are two very successful entrepreneurs who are small business and business solutions executives with our company, LegalShield. They have both had a tremendous amount of success themselves and are both highly regarded as coaching experts in our B2B or business-to-business space. These are two people in our industry that have achieved pinnacle levels. Not only are they $200,000 and $300,000 ring earners, meaning within a 12-month time frame they've earned that income, but they have also been inducted into an elite club in our company called the Millionaires Club, which means they have earned over $1 million in their tenure with LegalShield. So without any further ado, it is my honor and privilege to introduce you to Mr. Alistair Edwards from the amazing state of Atlanta and Mr. Mark Riches from the incredible state of Texas. Mr. Riches, were you able to make it on the line with us?
I am. I'm on here live. Yes. Good evening, everyone. And Ms. Beverly, thank you for that incredible introduction. I want to welcome all of those who are joining our webinar live this evening, and also just welcome those who are listening to this webinar on playback. I know that we're going to make this available, and I'm excited for that as well. I appreciate those of you who were quick to take action and register for this webinar this evening. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of available spots, and so that was something that filled up very quickly within a few hours of us announcing that. But that's why we're going to make it available on playback as well. And so whether you're listening to it on playback or live, we want to welcome you. For those of you who are on live, we've got a pretty special opportunity to be able to interact this evening, and I'm super excited to be able to do that. I am very, very honored and humbled and excited to be able to share some time this evening with an incredible leader, someone who is out in front of the B2B space, Mr. Alistair Edwards, and we're going to have a chance to do some Q&A tonight, and again make this a fairly interactive experience for those of you who are joining us live. So I hope you're excited, as excited as I am, and I'll tell you, I was honored to be able to speak this summer at the Team New Vision event in Louisville, Kentucky. And while I was there, my favorite part of being at an event like that is really never being on stage. It's being in the audience and listening to other trainers and other speakers. And as always, I've been to several New Vision events, Team New Vision events in the past, and as is always the case, it was extraordinarily educational and motivational for me, and I wrote a lot of notes. It helped expand my vision, and one of the segments that I was really impressed with was a panel, and Mr. Edwards, who's with us this evening, was one of the panelists that spoke, and as he was speaking, I sat there thinking, okay, I want to make sure that people in my organization get a chance to hear from him. And so what you're seeing tonight is actually an idea that came into my mind while I was watching that panel. I thought, man, I would love to do some kind of a training webinar with Mr. Alistair Edwards. And so for me, this is great because it's a fruition of something, of an idea that started several months ago. And again, just an honor for me to be able to have him here training with us and speaking with us this evening. I wanted to just take a few minutes as we start here and go over some of the topics that we're going to be covering, and I hope that you can see my screen and that technology is working the way that we want it to this evening. But here are some topics that we're going to be covering tonight. First off, I'm going to take just a few minutes and do a review of employee benefit marketing. That's our overarching topic tonight. We're going to be talking about taking LegalShield and IDShield into the B2B space and marketing those products as employee benefits. That's certainly not the only opportunity for income in our business. It's not the only thing that successful LegalShield associates do by any stretch. In fact, our top money earners Many of them have probably never opened a group or spoken to a group of employees offering LegalShield or IDShield as an employee benefit. However, as a company, group marketing or employee benefit marketing has always been one of the foundational aspects of this business. It's where we have hundreds of people who have earned a six-figure income with LegalShield is in this particular space. If you want my humble opinion, I'll tell you, I think it's probably the best opportunity that we have going for us right now. And I love building a team. I love the networking aspect of our business. Don't get me wrong. And I think that for your long-term future, I hope that you love that aspect or are learning to love. For those of you who started more on the B2B side, I hope that you're learning to love that aspect of our business. But I'll tell you, as far as where we sit right now, the opportunity to leverage and be able to get our message in front of the masses, I don't know of anything that we could do that could be as profitable right now in this particular window than in employee benefit marketing. And whether that is you and I out there marketing these products as an employee benefit, whether that's we are recruiting individuals who wish to do that, and we want to effectively be able to help them and assist them in that process. However that looks for you and your particular business model, I just know that piece is a big piece. When the Equifax breach happened just a few weeks ago, and 145 million people, some of their most sensitive information was compromised, and more than 145 million people became all of a sudden very interested in having not just credit monitoring, but the best identity theft protection out there. It's the employee benefit marketing approach that allows us to reach those masses in a way that is unparalleled in the industry. So I'm excited about it, and that's our overarching topic. Now we're going to be talking about some specifics of employee benefit marketing. Tonight we're going to be able to be privileged to be able to hear from Mr. Edwards talking about how to use referrals to get warm market leads, and that's something I hope that we are all paying attention and getting ready to take some notes on. You've got a gentleman here who's making $300,000 a year. That's not chump change. Who is a millionaire and who has built his employee benefit business almost entirely, or at least predominantly, by using referrals and warm market leads. So I want you to really pay attention to that. I'm excited for that. I'll then take a few minutes and talk about phone prospecting. And I think some of the things that we'll talk about there will apply whether we're calling on the phone to warm market leads or whether we're cold calling. And I know that's kind of a dangerous phrase. That's something in sales that people don't like to talk about. I'm going to rip that open, and hopefully we'll get over that, because I'll tell you what, there are people that make a lot of money because they called the right person at the right time. And so I'll talk to you about that and share some tips that hopefully are helpful in your phone prospecting that you do. Then we'll talk about decision maker meetings. When we're prospecting, again, warm market, cold market, doesn't really matter. When we're prospecting, the idea is to always set a decision maker meeting. That's what we're going for. We have to be able to present to a decision maker in order to be able to present to the employees. Nobody just walks into a company and happens to stumble into a mandatory meeting with all the employees and says, hey, I'm going to talk to you guys. That's something that's set up. A decision maker somewhere is saying, yes, I'll give you permission to speak to our employees. And so how does that meeting, what does that meeting look like? How can we make sure that those are successful? How do you close one of those decision maker meetings? I've seen that, at least in my business, that's one area where people, they stumble a little bit. They're good at sharing the information. They're good at getting the decision maker to say, wow, this sounds really good. They're good at getting the decision maker interested. But when it comes to actually setting up the enrollment, that's where they might stumble a little bit. So we'll talk about that. And then we will have some time at the end of our webinar tonight for some Q&A. Now, instead of using the question, little window here in the webinar. I tried that the other day, and it's hard for me to read. Maybe I'm just getting old, I don't know, but it's hard for me to read in that little window. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, tonight, as you have a question, or if there is a topic that you say, man, I'd really like to get these individuals' feedback or insight on this particular topic, especially if it's something that that has been a challenge for you. And I'm going to tell you, the things that have been challenges or may be today challenges for you, I've been around this business long enough to know that what you are dealing with, someone else is dealing with the exact same thing or something very similar, or someday soon will. And that's why I love to do some Q&A, because you might ask a question that someone else hears and is able to get an answer to that's going to help them in a decision maker meeting that they do tomorrow, or in an enrollment that they do tomorrow, or tomorrow as they go out and walk their community, or pick up the phone and begin prospecting. But something that you're going to ask tonight is going to benefit them, and they don't even know it yet. And I've seen that happen time and time again. And so if you have one of those questions, or if you have a challenge that you'd like to get some perspective on, I can't promise that we're going to be able to get to all the questions, but we will do our best to get to as many of them as possible. And if you'll just email me tonight throughout the webinar, mike@mikeriches.com is my personal email address, and I'll be checking that throughout the webinar, and certainly as we get to the end of the webinar tonight, mike@mikeriches.com. If you can just shoot me an email, and then I'll read those questions on the air. We thought about maybe opening up the lines, but there's just so much background noise when you have a group this size, and as much as we want to hear from folks, we don't really want to hear someone yelling at their kids or flushing the toilet and that kind of stuff. So if you'll humor us and shoot me an email with your question, I think that'll be a great way to cover that. Again, just as a review, and I know many of you, if not all of you, have probably been through an employee benefits certification training. One of the things that we learn about in that training is the importance of following the system. I love the fact that we are in a business that has a rock-solid system, a system that works. And I'll tell you what, I'm proud of that. It's a positive to me, because when you have a system, there should never be a day in your LegalShield business, especially on the employee benefits side, where you wake up and say, I wonder what I should do today. That should never happen. You and I should never wake up and not know exactly what we need to do, because we're either going to be out prospecting, or we're going to be following up with people that we've already prospected, or we've got decision maker meetings and enrollments on the books, or we've got a list of active groups that we're going to be servicing. And that's kind of the whole point here, is that the system teaches you what to do. And if we'll just follow it, the system works. The system works. And if you get nothing else from me tonight, get that this system, it really does work. And it's been proven to work. Again, we're not talking about a few people. We're not talking about dozens of people. We're talking about hundreds of people who have earned a six-figure income following this system. That's a big enough sample size that you and I can sit back with confidence and say, you know what, we're going to follow the system. It's always intriguing to me, and I mentioned this on a conference call with our organization earlier this week, but for the benefit of those who may not have been on that call, I mentioned those that come into our business and immediately think that they've got a better way. And it's just intriguing to me. It's actually a little bit frustrating to see that, because I think of our system as like a superhighway where cars are just buzzing along, 80 miles an hour. Man, they're just flying down the road. And it's like some people want to come in our business and take their pocket knife out in the woods and say, I'm going to carve my own superhighway. I'm going to show you how to do it the right way. And again, you've got every right to do that. You're free to make your own choices and decisions. I just would encourage you, instead of carving your own highway out, Just jump on the highway. Just get in your car and drive. And that doesn't mean there's not going to be a learning curve. That doesn't mean that you might not be uncomfortable, because you probably will. And if you have sales background, there's going to be things that we do a little bit differently than you may have done in the past. But if I could give you any advice, it would be follow the system. Trust in the system. Defend the system. It's okay to ask questions, but don't question. And there's a big difference there. If you'll just do that, your learning curve will be so much shorter than if you're like some that just, it takes them a while to kind of get to that point where they're humble enough to say, you know what, I'm ready to follow the system. If I had any advantage when I was 23 years old getting started in this business, it was not experience, it was not education, it definitely was not good looks or anything like that. If I had any advantage at 23 years old, it was that I was young and naive. And so my brother, who recruited me and helped me, kind of learn the script, and he had sent me a copy of his enrollment script, and he told me to record myself reading it, and I just did. When he told me to do something, I just did it. I didn't really know any better. I just kind of went along, and I followed his advice. And I don't know that I realized at that point that that was an advantage, but looking back 15 and a half years later, it was absolutely an advantage, because I didn't really question. I just followed the system. And lo and behold, the system worked. So I am, again, super excited to be able to delve into several of these things with all of us this evening. And I'm just so looking forward to hearing from Mr. Edwards and the first topic that he's going to cover, which is prospecting. And again, I know we've had an introduction already, but when you have the chance to listen to someone who's had the success that he has had, I just hope that you're ready to actively listen and take notes, and more importantly than just listening, learning, and taking notes, go out and apply what he's going to share with us. Mr. Edwards, thank you so much for your willingness to join up and do this webinar this evening, and I will give the floor to you, my friend.
Mr. Rich, thank you so much, sir. Can you hear me?
We got you loud and clear.
Awesome, awesome. Well, first of all, let me say thank you for inviting me to partner with you on this webinar. I, like you, was totally impressed when you did your training in Louisville regarding how to sell the membership. It was probably one of the best trainings I've seen on that topic in my 14-year career with the business. So I'm truly honored to be partnering with you on this. I'm going to go right into it because I don't want to belay the hour, but I'm definitely going to go right into the business of prospecting, because at the end of the day, for us to make an income, for us to generate financial freedom, for us to generate residual income, we first have to have a customer. We have to first find someone that sees the need of what we have, and then we have to be willing to share the need and see if they have a liking to take advantage of it. And so I always start off by, first of all, following your dollar. You know, that's the most important thing, I think. You know, we all spend money every day in different places, and some of us spend money in the same place on a regular basis. So if you are consistently spending money somewhere, whoever you are spending that money with should be willing to at least speak with you to find out how you earn the money that you spend with them. So I'll say that again. If you are consistently spending money somewhere, the person that you're spending that money with should be willing to at least hear from you what you do in order to be able to spend that money. And once you have that conversation with them or presentation with them, they have two mandatory obligations, in my opinion. One, they're either going to become a customer, or two, they're going to become a referral partner for you. They're the only two options they have. Meaning, if you are constantly spending money with someone, they should either be a customer of yours, or they should be someone that is finding you customers. It's called a relationship. In life, I've learned that the biggest thing you can do is build a relationship. My dad taught me once, he said, Alistair, access and inheritance will always outproduce hard work and education. Meaning, he said to me, look, go to school, get a good education, and I want you to work hard once you get that knowledge. But he says, I also want you to work hard at building relationships. And he says, don't count anyone out. He says, while you're in school, the nerd will end up being the CEO one day. The weird guy will probably be president. And you want to make sure that you have a great relationship with them when they get those roles. So always work on your relationships. So I've always gone out and treated people, one, with respect at all times, but with dignity, because you never know where they may be in the future. So let's talk about following your dollar. Let's say you go to a cleaners and you provide you take your clothes to the cleaners every day. You should develop a relationship to where you should be easily able to ask them, hey, would it be okay for me to share with you what I do? Maybe you might know some people that could use my services. So I would talk to that cleaners about the small business plan and also about the benefit of making sure that their employees are covered with our services, right? So I'll give you an example. My barber has a small business plan for me. Now, my first barber, when I moved to Atlanta, became a very good friend of mine, had the services for me. And about a year and a half in, I realized that he was in pre-cancel. And I called and I said, hey, why are you, I noticed your membership is in cancel, everything okay? He says, yeah, I'm not using it. And I tried to, regenerate that membership and get him to sign back up, but he refused to. He said, no, I'm not ready to sign up. Well, in his shop was another barber who had decided to open his own business, who had also gotten a membership from me. So I decided to go to the new barber. Rashawn is now my barber. Well, my old barber decides to give me a call. And he says, Mr. Edwards, hey, man, I haven't seen you in the shop lately. Everything okay? I says, yes. I says, I'm actually using a different barber. He says, why? I says, well, I have a membership. You had a membership with me for LegalShield. It was only, $17 a month, and you decided to cancel it. He says, you stopped coming to me because I canceled your $17 membership. I said, well, one, my $17 membership was bringing you value. If you chose not to use it, that's on to you. But two, I was coming every single week. Every week that I come, I pay $20. So I was basically paying for you to have the membership. You chose not to have it. I have to support someone that is supporting me. It doesn't mean we're not friends. It doesn't mean that I dislike you. It just means that if there's the option to support someone that is supporting my business versus the option to support somebody that isn't, and they both do the same thing, I'm going to go with the person that is supporting my business. So the guy that cuts my lawn, he has a small business plan, and the two guys that work with him have a family plan. My dentist is the same thing. So when in 2009, when I got really interested in the B2B space, I just happened to be at my dentist one day, and how when you get your cleaning, they say, well, he says, well, Mr. Edwards, you need to come back for a deep scaling. He's walking me to the front counter, and he says, we definitely want to get you scheduled for a deep scaling. And I said, well, Dr. Turner, let me ask you something. Is there a possibility that you have any staff meetings? He said, yeah, we do a staff meeting every Thursday. I said, would it be okay for me to come in and talk to your staff for about 10 minutes and share with them about our legal and identity theft protection benefit? He says, well, Alistair, I really don't allow outside vendors to come in and talk to our employees. So I walk a couple more steps up and I said, well, Dr. Turner, let me ask you something. Who's the dentist that you are recommending for the deep scaling? He says, no. He says, we're capable of doing that here in office. I said, I totally understand that. But I've been coming to you now for over 4 years. And every time I come, I have to pay a copay. The reason I'm able to pay the copay is because I sell a legal and identity theft protection benefit. And you're now telling me that I'm not allowed, or you don't allow people to share information with your staff. Because I've been coming to you for 4 years, I will trust you and I trust your recommendation. I just hope that the person you refer me to will be willing to let me talk to their employees. He says, well, Alistair, why don't you talk to Martha? We'll make an exception. Well, they've been a customer of mine now ever since. I wasn't rude. I wasn't disrespectful. I was just clear and postured in what my objective was. If I do business with you, there are only two options. You are either going to be a customer or a referral partner. So who are your centers of influence? Think about it. Who do you know? Who's already a business owner? Who is the CEO of a company? Or who is the head of the Chamber of Commerce? Who do you know that can get you in front of people that have employees? Warm market is always good. Everyone you know fits in one of two categories. They are a decision maker, or they know the decision maker. Meaning everyone either works for themselves or works for someone. If they work for someone, they know who they work for. So don't be afraid to ask the question. Mr. Rich, let me ask you a question. At your current place of employment, who's the person that's responsible for lunch and learns, or who's the person that makes the decision regarding the benefits that your team is allowed to participate in? Would it be okay for you to give me their name, number, and tell me the best way to get in touch with them? And you take that note and then you go into prospecting that person, but you're coming from a warm place. So now when I go meet with Mr. Jones, I can easily say, hey, Mr. Jones, you don't know me, but I was referred to you by Mr. Richards. He speaks very highly of you, and he said that you would be the person that would make the decision regarding the services that we provide for companies like yours. Would it be possible for me to get 5 to 10 minutes of your time to show you how we can help you? Another thing you want to do is join networking organizations. A lot of my success has come from organizations. So right now I'm probably a part of maybe 6 different organizations. So I joined the Atlanta Business League. I've joined the National Black MBA. I'm a member of the National Sales Network. I'm a member of 100 Black Men of Atlanta. These are all different organizations that have a large membership of large business owners or influential people in different areas. Here's the good thing about LegalShield. There is no one alive that is not eligible for our benefit. So meaning I don't have to look for a small or a targeted market as to who I want to present my information to, because anyone I present my information to can use our services. Anyone out there would love to have access to our members' perks. Anyone out there would love to be able to talk to an attorney without getting the bill. So our product is what I call universal. So any business owner I talk to or any CEO I talk to, if I make a proper presentation, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, Alistair, yes, that is something we can use. Or Alistair, yes, that is something my employees can use. So definitely you want to make sure you're joining organizations like the BNI or your Chamber of Commerce or any civic organization. You may want to be a member of be actively involved in your fraternity or in your sorority or in any type of organization where you have a platform to be able to introduce yourself and meet people. Now, let me say this. When you join that organization, you don't come in there saying, hey, I want to sell you all something. You go to an organization like that and you become a participant of whatever their objective is. So you are going to be working with the organization, volunteering with the organization. My personal opinion is if you join an organization like that, there's only one committee that you need to be working on and working on quickly, and that is the membership committee. Here's why. That means you get to talk to all the new members when they come in. Meaning if someone joins the organization, you're the first point of contact or one of the first points of contact. So here's the script I use with every new member that joins every organization that I have to be a part of the membership committee with. Mr. Rich, how are you doing? First of all, thank you so much for joining the National Sales Network or whatever organization it is that they've joined. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Alistair Edwards, and I'm a part of the membership committee. And what I would love to do is schedule about 10 minutes of your time to sit down to find out 2 things. One, what was your decision in joining the organization? And 2, what can we as an organization do to help you grow your business? What would be a good time for me to meet with you? Here's why you always get the appointment. Because 1, you wanted to find out what you can do to help them. And 2, you want to know why they joined the organization. Now, when you have that meeting with them, you sit down, you take copious notes, and you give them 10, 15, 20 minutes to tell you exactly those 2 things. Here's the reason they joined the business. Here's what they're looking for. Your objective is now to remember in your Rolodex who else in the organization can fulfill those needs of what that individual just asked for. So if they say, hey, I'm trying to find someone, one of the things I wanted to do was expand my network, you can say, well, you may want to connect with this person, or you may want to connect with that person. hey, this person is the person you may want to talk to help you with your advertising. Now, Mr. Rich, while I have your attention, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself also, and if there's anything I can do to help you or your business, I'll be willing to do that. One of the things I do is I provide a service for businesses like yours to where you have unlimited access to some of the top-ranked attorneys to consult with without you getting a consultation fee. If that could be of any service to you in the future, or if there's anything I can do to help you, please feel free to contact me. So I don't go into a full presentation, but I slowly introduce to them what it is I do and how I can be of value to them. If during the initial conversation I've heard some things that I know we could be of assistance to right away, I will say, you know, Mr. Richards, it's funny you said one of the things you were dealing with was absenteeism at your place of employment. Well, one of the things we do is help eliminate that, because I guarantee one of the reasons your employees are calling out is because they're just dealing with life event situations, things that you are not capable of answering or handling or helping them with. It could be simple as an identity theft situation or a speeding ticket. Good news is one of our services gives your employees access to resources that can handle those issues for them in an expedient amount of time, 9 times out of 10 doing it without them having to take time off of work. If that's something you might be interested in hearing more about, please feel free to, let me know and we can discuss that further. But my main objective today was to find out what it is we can do as an organization to help you. Thank you so much. And as you build a relationship, as you continue to be a part of these organizations, people now begin to know, like, and trust you. Remember, people only buy or do business with people they know, like, and trust. So don't think that you're going to get a decision maker in a warm market referral immediately or in a networking organization immediately. Some of my deals have been done on day 1. Some of them have been done on day 100, and some of them have been done 3 or 4 years later in the organization. Meaning when I'm in the organization, I'm not there as the person selling LegalShield. I happen to be the person that's very active in the organization who just happens to be a LegalShield rep. So there's a difference. What you don't want to be is the person in the networking organization where everybody says, oh, here he comes trying to sell me something again, and they go the other way. You don't want to be that person. You want to be known as the person, man, if you need to know anyone anywhere or want to be connected, Alistair is the guy you need to talk to because he knows everyone. Alistair is the one that can get you in. If you want to meet that person, you need to talk to Alistair. Because once you become the connector and they receive a deal from whoever you've connected with them with, they now feel obligated or enticed to make sure that they connect you also. And every now and then, don't be afraid to ask the question. Hey, Mr. Rich, I just want you to know, one of the things I do is help companies reduce their absentees and increase the productivity of their workforce. Now, let me ask you something. If I can ever be of help to you, or if you know of anyone that could be used at service like that, would you mind giving me that referral? And every now and then, I'll throw a different tagline. So one time I may talk about employee benefits. One time I may talk about individual company. Hey, Mr. Rich, I don't know if you know of any parents out there that have kids away at school that would like to have something in place to protect them when they're not there to protect them. Meaning if they were to get pulled over or be detained or questioned while they're away from home, they'd be able to call and talk to an attorney immediately without having to pay an hourly cost. If you know of any parents that have kids away at school, who do you know that you think might be interested in something like that? Here's what I hear all the time. Well, shoot, I got kids in school. Well, 9 times out of 10, I knew you did because I was a part of the membership committee. I talked to you about who you are and what you want to do. I've made that notation. But I asked the question from the point of who do you know? I didn't come in saying, hey, I want to sell you something. I came from the point of view, look, who do you know that could use a service like mine? When you talk about the service that you provide, they automatically say to you, I fit in that category. Oh, didn't know. Let me tell you how I can help you. But now they have given you the permission to talk to them about what it is you have and how you can help them. So when you go into the organizations or civic and war market organizations, remember your goal is not to go in there and be the salesperson. Your goal is not to go in there and be that person that everyone is running from. What you don't want to be is, oh, it's that LegalShield guy again, or it's that LegalShield lady again. All they talk about is LegalShield. No, you're going to there to be a contributor to the organization and what they do. And in the process, you become reputable. And in the process, people begin to like you. Then they begin to trust you. So whatever it is you recommend to them in the future is something of value. And we already know what we provide is value. So if I know someone that's doing a business that they say, hey, I make copies all the time, and man, they're expensive, I will say, well, let me ask you something. Have you been using your LegalShield members perks? And guess what they're going to say? No, I don't have them. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I didn't tell you. One of the advantages of using our services is we give you great discounts at vendors, one of them including being Office Depot. I know as a small business owner, you definitely want to have access to that. You definitely would be able to see value in that. I mean, for the amount that you pay for the monthly membership, I guarantee you'll save that on your copying cost each month. So I don't have to sell them the whole package. I can sell them one portion of what we do. And as they sign up, once they've signed up, I can say, hey, let me tell you some of the other advantages you now have that you have our services. Here's how we can help your business. Then I can turn around and say, hey, I know you have employees. What would be the chance of me getting the opportunity to maybe do a lunch and learn or come out and speak to your employees so you can see how them having this benefit can actually help you as the business owner. So those are just some of the things I definitely want you all to start being conscious about what you're doing. The reason we've been able to make this type of income with this business is because it's conscious activity. You know, you can't wake up in the morning and be like, okay, what am I going to do today? You have to wake up intentionally, knowing what it is you plan to do and how you plan to go out there and do business, and be consistent in that. Because your reputation and your name is everything when it comes to doing business and building long-term residual income. So, Mr. Rich, with that, I'm going to turn the next slide over to you, sir.
Fantastic. I'm sorry, I'm still writing notes from what you said. This is great stuff. Hey, I hope you guys are enjoying this as much as I am. Mr. Edwards, thank you very much for sharing such great information on prospecting. And you know, this is really where it starts, right? I mean, you're never going to open a group if you don't prospect groups. I mean, you're never going to get a decision maker meeting. You're never going to get an enrollment. You're never going to have a group that you're able to go service unless you and I really buckle down. And I 100% agree with Mr. Edwards on everything he just said, but I love how he talked about conscious activity. Again, intentionally going out and prospecting companies and opening groups. And I mean, that's what it's about. I love everything that he shared about following your dollar and really using your warm market connections, whether that's the owner of a company. I mean, if you know someone that owns a company that has 100 employees, that's fantastic. But I love what Mr. Edwards said. If you know someone that works at a company that has 100 employees, they don't have to own the company. They don't even have to be in HR. They know the people who are, and they can give you a referral. I love that method of thinking. And again, I hope that you're taking to heart what he's sharing with you about using your warm market and then also expanding your warm market. I meet people all the time that say, well, I don't really have much of a warm market. Okay, well then go expand, go get a warm market. You need to go make a warm market. Again, be intentional about those types of things. Now, when I got started, that was probably closer to my case because I was brand new in the city where we were living in Shreveport, Louisiana. When we moved in there, we really didn't know anyone there. Now, I would go on to develop relationships and meet people in the community and church and places where I was spending money. I would go on to open groups via some of those connections. But when I got started, again, frankly, for me, cold calling was going to have to be a part of what I did, because sometimes you're going to need to expand your pipeline more quickly than your warm market may allow. And I say that with caution, though, because again, sometimes it's easier to go face the cold market than it is the warm market. And we think that it would be opposite, but I've learned that sometimes it's easier because you don't want someone that you know and like and have a relationship with to turn you down. But if a stranger turns you down, it doesn't sting as bad. And that's why I think sometimes it's easier to go to the cold market. And I've seen too many people make this mistake where we teach them a thing or two about about prospecting into, again, your cold market or people that you don't really have a connection with, and all of a sudden, that list of prospects that they come up with that is 100 times more valuable than a list of prospects that they don't have a connection with, but that list of warm market prospects, it's like they just kind of put that on the sideline. And they're off Googling, companies trying to find find the name of a decision maker, or they're using Reference USA or Manta or one of these other lead sources. And look, I've used all that. It's not that those sources are bad, but I would absolutely go through with a fine-tooth comb that warm market list, and I would work on expanding that warm market list. I would work the heck out of that warm market list before I ever got on Reference USA, if I were you. And that's what I want to make sure that we don't do, is put that on the back burner and then start dedicating all of our time to going out and creating new relationships. Now, do we know how to create new relationships? Yeah, in fact, we're pretty good at it. And we bring something of real value to the market. So creating new relationships is actually easier for us than it is for others in other industries. Because so many industries, when if you're selling collections, for example, man, you're calling a company saying, "Hey, can I come in and have an appointment with you?" You're the fifth person to call that day, or some other voluntary benefits are really more like that. Some other financial services. Back in the day, today you don't get this as much, but credit card processing, man, there was a time where a company might get 10 calls a day, someone trying to sell them credit card processing, and so again, we don't really have a lot of competition in what we do. That prospect's phone is not ringing off the hook with people trying to sell them legal and identity theft plans. In fact, in most cases, you're probably the first person to ever call them and offer something like that. And it's something of real value that you bring to the marketplace. So again, it's easier for us to create new relationships, and at some level, I don't want anybody to be afraid of doing that. That's this first slide here. I really love this picture, because that's how I felt when I started phone prospecting. I just was like, man, that phone looked like it weighed 1,000 pounds. And I remember Harlan Stonecipher used to talk about that. You need to sit there and make some phone calls. We do this, whether it's follow-up calls, whether it's prospecting calls. I see people that phone just weighs 1,000 pounds, and Harlan used to say, man, you'll find every excuse in the book not to make those calls. You'll check your email, you'll go clean your office, and then you'll clean your office again, and you got to get organized. And about that time, it's lunch, so you say, well, I'm not going to do it now. I don't want to catch people while they're at lunch. So you go eat a long lunch, and then you're thinking, man, I don't really want to call them early afternoon. They'll be tired. They just got back from lunch. He said, you'll find every excuse not to pick up that phone. Why is it so hard sometimes to pick up the phone? Why is it, and whether it's on the phone or in person, why is it so hard sometimes to go out and prospect and try to meet new people and create new relationships? And the answer is because that's the aspect of our business where we meet the most rejection. Let me say that one more time. Prospecting is the aspect of our business where we are going to face the most rejection. I might sit down with a list of 50 companies, and again, this is not warm market numbers, but if it's my cold market, I might sit down with a list of 50 companies and call through that list and end up with one appointment. 1 out of 50, that's a 2% success rate. Now, if that's a warm market list, it'll be much higher than that. But if I'm cold calling, 1 out of 50, that's a 2%. Even if I am like cold caller of the year and whipping everybody else on my cold calling numbers, it might be 5% that I'm getting, right? It's never going to be super high. Well, where else in our business are you going to have a 2 to 5% success rate? Where else in employee benefit marketing are you only going to get 2 to 5%? It's not going to be in decision maker meetings, because way more than that are going to be interested in a decision maker meeting. In fact, I don't know that you'd find 5% of decision makers that you meet with that are not interested. The vast majority of decision makers that I've met with in 15 and a half years have been interested. And way more than 5% have turned into groups. You're not going to find that low of a success rate in an enrollment. And now you're going to have your outliers. We've all had offers, right? We have enrollments where we show up and just nothing goes right and nobody signs up. I'm not saying that you're never going to have a bad experience in an enrollment, but your success rate, your average, is not going to be 5%. It's going to be 50%, 60%. With Equifax, 70, 80% of what a lot of people are seeing right now. So you're going to have, look, to only get 1 out of 50, and you and I know this, that's a lot of rejection. Now, the reality is it's really not a lot of rejection. Because it's not like if you get 1 out of 50, it's not like 49 people are telling you to get out of here, get lost, and never call them again. In fact, 45 of them you just left a voicemail with. I mean, and you're going to get some that say no, thank you. At least for me, when I've been cold calling, I always get more to say no than to say yes. And that's kind of a general rule of thumb. And again, it's probably the only aspect of our business. Now, maybe on the recruiting side, that's not the same. But as far as the employee benefits model, that's the only aspect of our business where we get more no's than we get yeses. And so that's why it's hard. Now, here's the reality of it. I'm not a negative person. I don't like to focus on the negative, so I'm going to switch this slide. Instead of focusing on how hard it is, let's talk about how important it is. Because again, it is vital. It's the lifeblood of your employee benefit business. The day you stop prospecting is the day that you can guarantee that your income will go down. Now, if you've got active groups and you're able to service those active groups, it may not disappear, but the day you stop having time to prospect, I can guarantee you can kiss your employee benefits success. Maybe not kiss it goodbye, but it's going to decrease. You've always got to make time for prospecting. It is the most vital part of what we do. I've seen people make that mistake where they go out and they prospect some companies and they have some good decision maker meetings, and then they end up spending a lot of their time following up with some of those that they've already had. And they get so busy doing that they stop taking time to fill their pipeline. Your pipeline is going to always have leakage. So you've always got to be filling it. That's the way I like to look at it. That's why it's so important. So here are just some tips again. When you're prospecting, I'm a big believer in tracking your numbers. And I'm going to give you 3 numbers here that I would recommend tracking. And this is, really whether you're on the phone or whether you're prospecting in person, go walk your community. I think that these are 3 numbers that you always want to track. Whether it's cold or warm market, doesn't really matter. I would track these 3 numbers, because tracking these 3 numbers is going to allow you to see trends. And one of the best things that you can do to improve is identify current trends in your business. So here are your 3 numbers. You ready? Number of calls made. That's an obvious one. As obvious as it is, you'd be amazed how many people don't track that. You say at the end of the day, how many calls you make today? I made a lot. I made a ton. If they're being ambiguous, that means they're not tracking that number. I like calling someone saying, how many calls did you make today? 27, 42, 73. Whatever the number is, you can't improve it unless you know it. See, if you're making 25 calls a day, and that's your goal, and you get 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks out, and that goal is not producing the results that you need for it to produce, then you know that you've got to increase that activity. Well, if you don't track that, how do you really know what you need to increase it to? If all you do is make, quote unquote, a lot of calls, how are you going to increase that? You make a lot more? you can't. So I'm a big believer in tracking the number of calls that you make. The second number I'd encourage you to track the number of decision makers that you speak to. And look, this doesn't have to be difficult. It could be a spreadsheet. It could be tally marks, for all I care. But I do believe in tracking it over time. And so a spreadsheet, I think, works pretty well for this. But track the number of decision makers that you speak to, and then third, the number of appointments that you're able to set. So that your end result. The reason that middle number is so important, if I'm coaching someone on prospecting, and they tell me, Mike, okay, this week I've made 250 calls. I've made 50 calls a day. And that, by the way, that's another tip. When you talk about prospecting, especially in cold market prospecting, you've got to commit to some volume. Okay, you're not going to make 5 calls a day in the cold market and be at the top of any top producer list. Okay, you're going to have to commit to some volume. But if I'm coaching somebody and they say, you know what, I've done 50 calls a day, which is only about 2.5 hours, because again, most of them are voicemails. But they say, I've done 50 calls a day, 250 calls this week, but I've only gotten 2 appointments. And to me, that just seems low. It's 1 out of 125. That's their ratio. And they come to me and they say, what do I need to do to improve? My first question is going to be, what's that middle number? What is the number of decision makers that you actually spoke to? How many did you actually get on the phone? Because if they made 250 calls and they talked to 25 decision makers and they only got 2 appointments, then I know what their problem is. Their problem is they're probably saying the wrong thing, or they're saying it in the wrong way to the decision maker. But if they've made 250 calls and they only spoke to 4 decision makers and they ended up with 2 appointments, my coaching is going to change dramatically, because I'm going to tell them, don't change anything that you're saying to the decision maker, because you got 2 out of 4 to say yes. Their problem is more getting through the reception. It's actually getting to the decision maker. We lovingly call that person sometimes the gatekeeper. So those are 2 skills that we have to work on in this area of prospecting. You've got to be able to get through the gatekeeper and actually get the decision maker. Again, this is true on the phone, but I think you could apply a lot of this to when we go walk our community and when you're prospecting in person. If you walk into a company and you want to speak to John, the HR manager, and Joseph, the receptionist, is there, you're going to have to get through Joseph to get to John. I'm not saying that you need to go tackle Joseph and then run up the stairs to John's office. I'm saying you have to professionally and in a friendly way get Joseph to get John to come down and see you. Same thing on the phone. You're going to have to get that receptionist to put you on the phone with the decision maker. And is that going to work 100% of the time? No. But a good ratio, there's about 1 out of 10 calls. About 1 out of 10 calls I want to get a decision maker on the phone. So if my ratio's very much lower than that, that's probably a skill that I can work on. And by the way, when I get a decision maker on the phone, a good ratio, in my opinion, a good ratio there, if I'm cold calling, this is all cold calling numbers, but if I'm cold calling and I get a decision maker on the phone, a good ratio there is about 1 out of 5. That's why out of 50 calls, I'd want to get about 5, that's 1 out of 10, 5 decision makers on the phone and set 1 meeting on average. And if those are my numbers, I can make a 6-figure income all day long with LegalShield. And add to that now my warm market as I continue to expand my warm market and have success in that arena. But frankly, I can make a 6-figure income just from cold calling if I can get to those numbers, 1 out of 10 and 1 out of 5. So I just want to share some tips with you, some skills or some ways to sharpen the axe when it comes to developing these skills. When you're getting the decision maker on the phone, we talk a lot about posture, and I know that's kind of a confusing word because when we hear posture, we think of the way that we're sitting. Well, actually, if you're on the phone, sitting up straight is actually going to probably help you a little bit, but that's not what I mean when I say posture. What I mean by posture is how are you coming across to that person, whether it's the gatekeeper or the decision maker, but especially the gatekeeper. Who do they think you are? How are you coming across to that person? One way to say that is, which category are you in? And if you want to jot this down in your notes, there's 3 categories of people that call a company. Okay, salespeople that call companies, there's 3 categories: Category A, Category B, Category C. And here's what they are. Category A, those are people that call and they have an appointment. They have a phone appointment. Same thing with walking in. You know, when you walk into your dentist office and you have an appointment, you're Category A. You walk in, you say, hey, I've got a 1 o'clock. Okay, no problem. Sign in here and have a seat. They'll be right with you. That's Category A. Well, when we're prospecting, we're not going to be Category A. We don't, if we're walking in or we're calling on the phone, we're not going to have an appointment. Category C, the third one, that's a solicitor. And good gatekeepers are trained to recognize Category C. Did you hear that? They are trained to recognize Category C, okay? They want to spot a Category C person, and their job is to not let solicitors, Category C, in to see the decision maker, either on the phone, they're supposed to get them straight to voicemail, and that's it, or tell them never to call again. And certainly that's the case in person. What you and I have to be good at doing is becoming Category B. Category B is someone that does not have an appointment, but is supposed to be there. Or on the phone, doesn't have a phone appointment, but is supposed to be calling. And if you and I can get into Category B, if that's our posture, you'll be amazed how many decision makers you'll be able to actually get on the phone. Here's one way to get into Category B. Ask for the decision maker by their first name. If I'm calling John Smith, I'm not going to say, hi, is Mr. Smith in? Well, if I say that, that is Category C. It's like a big red light starts blinking. Boop, boop, boop. Category C, Category C. But when I call and say, hey, is John in? Then all of a sudden, now I'm more in that Category B. At least I sound that way because I'm someone that's supposed to be calling. When they say, can I tell him who's calling? Yeah, this is Mike Riches. And if they say, and who are you with? Oh, I'm with LegalShield. I mean, it's almost like they ought to know that already. Why are you asking? You ought to know that. I don't say that, but that's my posture. That's my tone. And I love it when they say, and can I tell him what this is regarding? My favorite answer on that, oh, you bet. I'm actually calling to set an appointment with him. Does he set his own appointments, or do you set them for him? That's a great way to get them off the phone and just get them on the phone, get you on the phone with that decision maker. Now, let me just give you 2 scenarios here. What if you don't have a name when you're calling? Or what if you have the wrong name? Have you ever had that before? Where maybe you look up the name of a decision maker and, you know, that you call and say, hey, is John in? John who? John Smith? Oh, he hadn't worked here in 2 years. If you've ever had that happen, that can be kind of embarrassing. And it, you know, frankly, you lose your posture a little bit when that happens. Let me teach you 3 words, if it's okay. 3 words that you can use that can help you in both of those situations. And it's really funny, but these 3 little words really do work. So if you want to jot these down, 3 little words. Is that yourself? Is that yourself? And let me give you an example. You don't have a name. You call and say, hey, I'm looking for the person that handles employee benefits for your company. Is that yourself? Or you call and say, hey, is John in? John who? John Smith? John hasn't worked here in 2 years. Oh, I am so sorry. Do you know who took his place? Is that yourself? See, when you ask that, I don't know what it does. I don't understand all the dynamics behind it. But it puts them in a position where they're much more likely to give you the right person, the right name. See, sometimes when you call a company and you don't have a name, for example, you say, hey, I'm looking for the person that handles employee benefits. It's like that gatekeeper all of a sudden, it's like their whole mission in life is to not give out information. You know, I don't know if you've ever felt that before, but it's like, yeah, they'll ask you all the questions in the book. Well, okay, now why are you calling? What kind of employee benefits? What are you really offering? What are you trying to do here? But when you say, I'm looking for the person that handles employee benefits for your company, is that yourself? All of a sudden, it totally shifts in their mind. It's amazing how much of the time they'll say, oh, no, that's Mary. You need to talk to Mary. John hasn't worked there in 2 years. Oh, do you know who took his place? Is that yourself? Oh, no, that Susan took his place. Do you want me to get him on the line? Now, sometimes when they ask, do you want me to get him on the line, and I've gotten the wrong name, I'll even say, no, don't worry about it, I'll call back. So I can call back a couple days later. They won't recognize my voice. I'll call back a couple days later with the right name and the right posture. But that's just personal preference. My point being, when you're prospecting on the phone, how do you get to category B? How do you get to someone that's supposed to be calling? It's sometimes you got to fake it till you make it, but it's having that confidence that they're going to put you through, that they're supposed to be putting you through. A great line, I've been assigned to meet with him. You know, I used to use that. I remember Wilburn Smith taught me that. You know, tell him, he said, call that company, tell him I told you to call him. That was back, I think he was the president of LegalShield back then. Man, that's a pretty strong line. So I went to a group school and I told that to the class. I said, just tell them, you know, I've been assigned. And someone once raised their hand and said, well, I don't feel real comfortable. I don't want to lie to them. And I said, oh, no, it's not a lie. I hereby assign you to call every company in America. Now you've been assigned. and they were able to, I guess, feel better about that. So if, let's see, I want to move on here and just share a couple more tips with you on setting the appointment when you do get that decision maker on the phone. I do believe in having a good script. And let's see here. Mr. Edwards, are you still on the line? I just got a notice that my screen is not being showed. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Oh, okay, good. It just came back on. So I apologize for that. But so again, hopefully, folks, you guys are seeing my screen. It says setting the appointment, have a script, and learn it well. I'm a big believer in having a script, just because, you know, not that you need to be reading a script, but find something that's going to work for you. Find something first that's worked for someone else, and then add your own voice to it. Sure, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm leery of changing too much. If Mr. Edwards gave me a script and said, here's what I use to set appointments, I wouldn't say anything. In fact, I'd try to sound like Mr. Edwards when I'm on the phone. I'm a big fan of R&D. That doesn't stand for research and development. That stands for rob and duplicate, and I think that applies here. But does that mean that there's only one script that works? No. I mean, if you lined up 100 top producers with LegalShield, they'd probably have 100 different scripts that they use when they're on the phone prospecting. I mean, that's something that everyone kind of develops over time. But again, start with something that works and then add your own voice. I'm a big believer in asking the right question. If you've got the decision maker on the phone now and you want to set an appointment with him or her, I think you got to ask the right question. And the right question is not, would you be interested in that? Or, we handle identity theft and legal. Would you be interested? No, that's not the right question. The right question is also not, hey, I want to come in and sit down with you for 15 minutes and share some information on legal and identity theft plans. Do you have time for that? That's not the right question. Because I'm going to tell you right now, most people aren't interested, and nobody has time. Yet those are the two questions that I hear more than any others when I'm training people. And so I'm a big believer in asking the right question. Now, the right question, there's a lot of different variations. But to me, it's always having to do with their calendar. So, for example, a great question would be, I've got to be actually in your area. I'm meeting with ABC Company next Wednesday. I've got to meet with them at 10 o'clock. How about I come in there at 9:30 and sit down with you? Would that work for you, 9:30 next Wednesday? That's how I like to ask it. Some people say, I'm going to be there at 9:30, or excuse me, I'm going to be there next Wednesday morning. Would 9 o'clock work better, or 10? Which would work better for you? Or next week, I'd love to come in and sit down with you. Would Thursday or Friday work better? But again, to me, you've got to get to a calendar. You've got to get to their calendar. If I can get them thinking about their calendar, all of a sudden they're not thinking about whether they're interested in sitting down with me. And my chances of getting that appointment just increase dramatically. I'm a big believer in having professional enthusiasm on every call. That's hard when you're making 50 calls in a day. But you have to think of yourself as a stage performer. Every time that you get a gatekeeper on the phone, every time that you get a decision maker on the phone, it's like, you know, these performers, if you've ever seen a Broadway musical, I mean, they're so fantastic. And it might be the 500th time that they've played that role, said the exact same lines, in the exact same way. But it's the first time that you're seeing it, and you would never know that it's their 500th or 200th or 1,000th time that they've played that role, because they bring that enthusiasm every time. Now, you and I are not stage actors. You don't have to put on makeup to make phone calls, but what you do have to do is have that professional enthusiasm on every call. And then remember to sell the appointment, not the product. That's another mistake I see people make. They get that decision maker on the phone, and they say, well, what is this about? And all of a sudden, they're right into their pitch. And they're trying to sell the product. They're trying to do their decision maker meeting over the phone. That's real hard to do. That is real hard to do. Try to describe a painting to someone who's never seen it over the phone. It never comes out the way, they never get the picture, the idea in their mind is never like it is in real life. So sell the appointment. What is it that you want to talk about? Legal and identity theft. Tell me more information. Well, I want to bring you more information. That's why I want to show you some of these things. That's why I'm going to be there next Wednesday. Would 9:30 work for you? I always go right back to the appointment every time that I can. And then finally, my final bullet point on this, and I've taken more time than I intended, I apologize, but remember the crusade. Remember why you're calling. Sometimes, you know, you might hear someone like Mr. Edwards who speaks with such confidence. And sometimes you might sit there and say, wow, that sounded real good when he said that, but I don't know that I could say that to somebody. And the reality is, the reason that he's got such confidence is because he knows why he's doing what he's doing. He knows that that decision maker is going to win way more than he's going to win. When he stands up in front of a group of employees, he knows that if they sign up, they're going to benefit way more than he's going to benefit. Yeah, he'll make a commission. Yeah, he'll get some counters. He might even get a performance club trip out of the deal. But they just got access to the legal system. They just got something that's going to save them thousands of dollars, way more than his commissions. Thousands of dollars over the lifetime of that membership. Sometimes thousands of dollars their first year in being a member. Not to mention the peace of mind that you can't put a price tag on that comes along with these products. So remember that. Remember, and sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. I get that. I was far from confident when I got started, but you know what? You got to remember the crusade. You got to remember that your confidence doesn't have to be about you. Your confidence can be about what you're there to share with them, and that'll help you. That'll help you build that confidence, especially over time. Remember, folks, as you have questions, Mike@MikeRiches.com. Just email me. I've gotten several emails already and some great questions that we'll have for our Q&A here in a bit. But Mike@MikeRiches.com. Email me those questions. And Mr. Edwards, I will give the floor to you, my friend. Thank you for being patient with me since I took more time than I intended.
Oh, no, that was good time and well spent. I'm sitting here taking a ton of notes. I mean, you drop nugget after nugget. I have been assigned to meet with him. Stolen, right? You bet. I was calling an appointment with him, right? I was calling to get an appointment with him. Does he set his schedule, or do you do that? You're automatically putting that person in a position to give you one of two answers. Yes, I'm the person that sets it. No, he's the one that does it. Let me get you through to him. I mean, you've dropped nugget after nugget. It's amazing information. Definitely something I'm going to be putting in play. Definitely something I'm going to be going over with my team, who I know is listening in, and make sure that we're doing that as we make calls. So that definitely thank you so much for that. You want to click to the next one for me? All right.
Yep. So, are you seeing the next one now? Okay, good. Perfect.
Got it. So let's talk about this decision maker meeting. So you've gotten the opportunity now to go in. They say, hey, okay, here's the appointment. Come see the decision maker. What's your next step? Well, let's make sure we go there prepared for the meeting. What you don't want to go in there is go in there and look unprofessional. So here's what I want to recommend. The tools that we're sharing with you, I would recommend that you order them directly from the corporate office. Meaning, don't try and reinvent them. Don't try and, messy copy them. Please don't bring them there in black and white, and please don't bring them in a vanilla folder. Okay? So you got to make sure that you are professional when you get this opportunity to meet with this decision maker. So you want to make sure that you have everything that you need to provide them with enough information to make a decision. Now, here's another thing I don't want you to do also is go in there with too much information. So I've seen people go in with articles and a whole bunch of stuff and statistics and all that. So I'll tell you from experience. I used to be a store manager with a large grocery store chain, and every now and then, well, not every now and then, every day, a different vendor was trying to get what we call an end cap. An end cap is prime real estate in the grocery industry, meaning that is where you are featured with your product for everyone that walks in the store to see. The only way you get an end cap is based on the profitability, meaning what is in it for me as the business owner, or for the company for me to receive a profit. What is the value of me giving you this end cap? Well, sometimes vendors would come to me with an entire packet. Let's talk about wine. Wine is something that's very competitive in the industry. I would probably have 8 or 9 different wine vendors or distributors that wanted to get their product on the end cap, very high markup, but everyone would come with their different presentation. The ones that got the end caps from me were usually the ones that came with a clear and concise objective of why theirs should be there. Meaning the only 2 things I needed to know is, what is my cost? What is my net profit? What is my immediate value? I was not really concerned that the grapes that the wine was made for were hand crushed and made in Venice. No, that was not my concern as the business owner. Now that may be a selling point for the customer who is buying it, but me as the person you're trying to get the deal was not concerned with where the wine was made. My concern was, what is my net profit? How soon can I turn the product? Meaning I don't want to have an end cap that's tied up. I want to make sure, 1, it has value, and 2, I can turn it. Well, it's the same thing when you are now presenting your LegalShield services. A business owner's schedule is full. You barely got the 10 minutes to present or talk to them. The last thing they want to do is see you put a packet on their desk where they think, for me to make a decision, I have to go through all this information. Because here's what usually happened when a packet like that was put on my desk. I would allow them to talk, and just because I saw the packet, I already unconsciously blocked them out because it was too much information, and as soon as they walked out the door, the packet went in the trash. So your main concern is, what is the objective that I'm bringing to the decision maker? I only bring a few things. 1, the fact sheet of whatever benefit it is that I am planning to share. So if it's a customer that I know is already contracted with another identity theft protection service, and that is not an option at this time, it's clearly been stated to me that that's the case, then there's no need for me to bring an IDShield fact sheet. I'll mention that we have one, and that, if you're ever looking at one in the future, we definitely want to share our information. So I'll go with just the legal plan. If I know they don't have either, it's a brand new potential customer, I'm bringing the LegalShield fact sheet, and I'm bringing the IDShield fact sheet. The one that explains the details as to what it is that our benefit provides. So after I go through it, they can look at it in detail later. I'm going to bring the HR flyer that explains to them the benefit of why they need to have our services. And then, of course, I'm going to have in my repertoire the Legal Needs of American Families brochure, but it's not something that I'm going to go through page by page with the decision maker. It is only there in case a certain objective comes up. And it is something that they can review later. And the last thing I'm going to have in there is the decision maker authorization card with the intent of getting it signed on the spot. So when I have the presentation, the immediate objective is to make sure that that card gets signed immediately once that meeting is over, meaning we have come to a decision to say, yes, we want your services. Yes, it sounds good. Here's the date. We can start rolling it out. So that's the main objective when you have a decision maker meeting. So that's what I want you to understand to begin with. Now let's talk about your folder. Just use the LegalShield folder. It's professionally designed. It's ready. There's no need for you to come in with vanilla or manila folders. Please don't do that. First of all, make sure once you've got this meeting, you know you're going to dress appropriately. What does that mean? Be professional in your appearance. Also consider what type of cologne, perfume, whatever you're using. What you don't want to do is go in there with an overbearing presence, meaning if they can smell you before you get in the office, that's not a good thing, no matter what type of cologne or perfume it is. So don't overdo that. Me personally, I don't wear them. I take a good shower the morning before the meeting and use some deodorant. Okay? Keep it simple. You don't want anything to distract the business owner from hearing what information you have. On your way to that meeting, once you've gotten the appointment, you're going to 9 times out of 10 be going past the receptionist or a gatekeeper. You always acknowledge that person. Based on how well you acknowledge them, they will also give you an indication as to what mood that decision maker might be in that day. That is always good information to know. So definitely make sure you're treating the receptionist or the gatekeeper who's waiting or who's going to guide you to that decision maker with respect. If there's something that you see that you noticed on that you can comment on, you know, is that a picture of your kids? Man, amazing. If you see a university sign, hey, did you go to Georgia State? Strike up some type of relationship conversation, right? So you want to make sure you break that ice with that gatekeeper. You also want to introduce yourself. Hey, my name's Alistair Edwards. I have a 10 o'clock appointment with Mr. Riches. Hey, if that person was the one that helped you get that appointment, or if that's the person you spoke to in the process of getting that appointment, you say, you're Shirley, aren't you? You're the one, you're the amazing lady I spoke to on the phone. So I always use words like amazing, phenomenal. You're the amazing lady I spoke to on the phone. Hey, let me just say thank you so much for getting this appointment lined up for me. It means the world to me. So you have now made that person's day, but if there's ever time you need to do a follow-up or get through, I can now say, hey, this is Alistair. Is this amazing Mary? Well, they remember because I said, you understand what I'm saying? You're setting them up for the consistency of being able to come in at any time you choose. When the decision maker comes out, it's a firm handshake and it's direct eye contact. No looking down, no looking to the side. It's a firm handshake. I didn't say a tight handshake. There's a difference between a firm handshake and a tight handshake. Don't squeeze their hand to the point where they feel like their hand is about to crack. It's also not a flimsy handshake, right? Like you have a disease or something they need to be aware of. It's simply a firm handshake and good eye contact. It's the same thing as the decision maker. You're also going to want to break the ice. When you walk in, simply break the ice. Hey, thank you so much for giving me the time here today. I see you went to Georgia Tech. Is that correct? You may have seen a diploma on the wall, da-da-da-da-da. You give them some time to talk a little bit about themselves. And then the immediate talk phrase that I go to is, Mr. Rich, I know I asked for only 10 minutes and I want to make sure I live up to that time. If at any point I'm going over, please do not feel offended to stop me. So I'm automatically letting the decision maker know that I'm going to be a man of my word. I'm going to live out to the time that you have already given me. 9 times out of 10, if the content that you're bringing is good and you have not delivered it within that 10 minutes, they're not going to stop you. But I'm letting them know that up front so that way they know this is not going to be a long meeting. This person is going to be held accountable to the time that they asked me for. So if I know it's 30 minutes, I'm going to tell them right up front, hey, Mr. Richards, I'm so glad you decided to give me 30 minutes today. If I get close to that time or it looks like I'm going over, which I will promise you I have no intent of doing, would you please let me know? So you definitely want to have that type of verbiage when you have that meeting. Next thing I'm going to do is definitely talk to them about, hey, here's my objective today. I'm going to share some great information with you, and at the end of the conversation, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Do you see value in what I'm sharing? And if the answer is yes, how soon can we go ahead and implement it? And if at the end of the conversation you don't see any value, Mr. Richards, I don't want you to feel like you have to beat around the bushes as to tell me, hey, Alistair, this is not for me. My objective is when we leave here today, both of us will have a clear vision as to where each one of us wants to go with our relationship. Is that okay with you? So I ask the question, is that okay with you? And they'll always be happy to say yes. I don't have a problem with telling you this is not for me, or yes, if I like it, we can go. So now I'm going to tell them about what I do, right? I always start off with simple questions. Mr. Richards, let me ask you a question. Is it fair to say sometimes you feel like an adult babysitter? Meaning your employees may come to you with problems that have nothing to do with your business, but because you're the CEO or because you're the HR director, they think that you're the one that's responsible for solving their problems. I can promise you 9 times out of 10, the answer is going to be yes. So I can give you an example. When I was a store manager, I knew the first hour of my morning was going to be what I call babysitting hour. Meaning as soon as I walked in, somebody had a problem about something. Mr. Edwards, I can't come in. The phone would ring. Mr. Edwards, I can't come in today because I got to deal with something. Or someone would come up to me, Mr. Edwards, can I leave early today? Because I got to do this. Mr. Edwards, I know this is not the right time, but do you know of, there was always something that had nothing to do with my immediate responsibility or business that I had to deal with. Now, here's the bad part. If it was my first cashier of the morning that was calling in to tell me, Mr. Edwards, I can't come in today, I've been a victim of identity theft, that means my entire schedule for the day is now disrupted. Because now I have to hurry up and find someone to come in and cashier for when I open the doors. So if that person that I call is not close by, that means I have to realign or reassign someone in my building to cover that shift, which means I'm taking someone away from what they were supposed to do in order to cover my opening cashier. Well, in every business, I don't care what the business is, everyone is hired and scheduled to do something specific. If that person calls out at the last minute, the whole entire operation has shifted or changed for the day. So if you know that, that is how I come at a decision maker. Is it fair to say, Mr. Richards, you schedule a tight schedule, but you schedule people when you need them for what you need them to do? The answer is going to be yes. I am here to help to make sure that that schedule is pretty much always on task and always filled the way you write it out. Is it fair to say that if Shirley, the amazing front office lady I just met, was to call out sick at the last minute because she found out she was a victim of identity theft, or if she was dealing a life event issue, meaning she found out she's suddenly going to be in a divorce, or she was stressed about a foreclosure, is it fair to say that that would be of stress to you also in your ability to find someone to replace her for that day? Well, one of the things we do is put something in place for business owners that allow the life event issues that affect their employees every day to be of minimum or of no disruption to their everyday operation. Does that sound like something you would be interested in hearing about? And then I can go through what my benefit provides. And then, of course, I'm going to ask the crucial questions. How are your other benefits currently enrolled out? If he says it, or if he or she, the decision maker, says this is the way it's rolled out and it's a way that I like, I say great, we can go right along with that. If he or she says, well, one of the things we do is we put people in a room and those that are interested can come by, then I'm going to handle that objection immediately. So I'm going to say, Mr. Richards, with all due respect, your time is very valuable. And with all due respect, so is mine. And the reason I've been partnering with business owners is because my objective is to make sure that I can help them in the biggest and greatest value ever. One of the things we discussed is making sure that I am able to increase your productivity and reduce your absenteeism rate. The problem is the person that may fall in that category will not be the person that volunteers to come and see me in the room. It would be much better for me, and I could be a better partner and a better service to you if you were able to give me 10 to 15 minutes at a staff meeting or a safety meeting to where I could address the benefit or share the benefit with everyone, because we have no idea who the next identity theft victim or the next person with a life event legal situation is going to be. But the good news is I can get everybody in 10 minutes. So when that individual pops up, you know that they've had the opportunity to take advantage of the services. Wouldn't you agree that would be a lot better? But not only that, I won't be here all day disrupting your operation. So I'm always going to show value to the business owner as to why it is I need to be in front of everybody. I'm not saying I need to be in front of everybody because I want to make more money. I want to talk to everybody. No, I want to be in front of everybody because we have no idea who is the person that could use our benefit the most. And 9 times out of 10, the people that really need to hear about our service are not the ones that are going to come visit me in the room. Remember, the reason I came here to talk to you, Mr. Rich, is to be a partner with you in helping you grow your bottom line. So those are the type of conversations you definitely want to have. Don't be afraid to tell them who and what you do. You know, hey, our company. You know, if you're brand new in the business, you don't have to say I have. You simply say, look, our company already works with over 34,000 companies around the country providing this great service. Meaning we're not a fly-by-night company. This is not the first time we've done this. We're experts at this area. We're well known for what we do. So I want you to be comfortable in that. You also want to build a relationship. So Mr. Riches, I also want you to know that I am, first of all, excited to know that I am going to be your personal LegalShield representative. I want you to know that you can call me at any time. I'm going to make sure that there's a system in place to where if you ever need me or my company or our services, we'll be readily available for you. So we're going to make sure that we talk to, you want to put the business owner at ease in any way possible regarding what it is that you're going to be providing for them. So in the decision maker meeting, you don't want to give them too much. You give them as much as they ask you for. Meaning I've had decision maker meetings where I haven't even told them what LegalShield does. It has simply been, hey, one of the things I want to do is help reduce your absenteeism, right? And increase the productivity of your workforce. We do that by allowing your employees to have access to some of the top-ranked law firms around the country. So when the everyday life event situations, things like divorce, bankruptcy, maybe a speeding ticket, anything like that that comes up that would usually make an employee be stressed and want to take time off of work or want to call in, trying to figure it out on their own, they can make a simple phone call and we have the experts figure it out for them. 1, it releases their stress immediately. 2, they don't think they have to take the whole day off to go deal with it because they know it's going to be handled. And 3, that means they're back at work doing what you need them to do. That's the great thing about partnering with us. All of the smart decision makers and business owners that have partnered with me have said, Alistair, that's one of the greatest values about being partnered with you. Can you see how that would be value to you also? Right? So you definitely want to make sure that's your type of verbiage that you're using with a decision maker. And don't be afraid to posture up and say what it is we do and how we do it. Because that's the great value of our business and what we do. We already know that by having our service in place, it's going to be of value to you. But you have to be postured enough to be able to communicate to that decision maker. So don't be afraid to have that conversation. You want to make sure you understand that we bring value. And most of your selling is going to be done by questions to where they say yes. Mr. Riches, statistics say that the average victim of identity theft would take at least 300 hours of their personal time in order to get it fixed if they chose to try and handle it on their own. Is it fair to say, sir, someone stole your identity today? Who do you think would be better at restoring it? A licensed identity theft risk management specialist, or would you be the one to go and get it all worked out, not even knowing where the person started in taking it? Your front office young lady, Shirley, who you know is your right hand, if she was to call you and say, hey, I need to go take care of this identity theft situation, that means she's going to be gone for the next 300 hours of the scheduled work day or work week. 300 hours in this case is probably 3 or 4 weeks. That is something that would totally disrupt your operation. It would be a lot better if she had a resource to where she could make one call, a professional is now handling the situation, and she's not stressed about it. She's here at work doing what you've hired her to do. That's why all the smart business owners I talk to love being partnered with us. We allow them to keep their top people in place doing what they were hired to do, especially knowing that Equifax just had a major data breach and any one of your employees could be in that situation at any minute. It is a lot better as a business owner to be proactive instead of reactive. So those are just some of the things that I definitely want to make sure you guys are conveying to business owners when you go in and have this conversation with them. Mr. Rich, anything you want to throw in on that?
Sir. Oh, that was fantastic. I've gotten several messages here that they're saying, please make sure that this is being recorded, because I really loved Mr. Edwards' language, and I want to make sure that we're recording this so I can go back and listen to it. And I just want to assure everyone, yes, it is being recorded, and yes, you will be able to go back later and listen and get some of that language down. I'm a big believer in just using the right language. You know, that's, to me, if you've got someone like Mr. Edwards that has had the success that he's had, he's saying things the right way. And again, as much as I can rob and duplicate, I'm going to do that. And so, Mr. Edwards, thank you. That was absolutely fantastic. I wanted to just mention, again, you know, if you do have some questions, I'm going to cover one final point, and then we'll go to some Q&A. Mike at MikeRiches.com. We've gotten some great questions in so far. And just I'll mention one thing on the decision maker meeting. I know that a lot of our folks have been having success having the decision maker go to the Equifax website and put in their information, because the chances of them being affected are fairly high. And so we set up a new domain on that just earlier today, because Equifax has changed that site a little bit. So if you go to the Equifax site, they really highlight the sign up for their protection, and I don't necessarily want to highlight that part of it. So we set up a domain that is just, it's www.checkequifax.com. So www.checkequifax, all one word, .com, and that will take you right to the page where all you have to do is just put in your information, last name, last 6 digits of your social, and hit continue, and it will tell you if you've been impacted. And again, the vast majority of people, it comes back, yes, it appears that you've been impacted by this breach, and that can be great for a decision maker meeting, because it opens their eyes when all of a sudden they realize, if they haven't checked it already, a lot of them have, but when they realize, man, they're at risk, or you know, they can put in their family members' information. We had one of our associates was in an enrollment, and he was talking about this site. The HR person left the enrollment, went to her office, came back to the enrollment. A few minutes later, she had checked. There were 30 people in the room. She had checked all 30 of them, and 28 were on the list, and all 28 of those people signed up. So I say on the list, came back with a positive result from that checkequifax.com site. So anyway, it's just something there that might be able to help you. Let me just take a minute and talk about this final point, which is closing the decision maker meeting, because again, I think that in general, we do a pretty good job of getting the decision maker to be interested. But when it comes to actually scheduling the enrollment, that can sometimes be a different story. And I really hope that you picked up what Mr. Edwards was sharing, that about his language and how he's closing that DM meeting from the minute he walks through the door. I mean, you know, that does not have to be at the very end, but I think it's important to kind of consider some points here, like, what is the goal of your meeting? We know that the goal of a decision maker in general is going to be to set an enrollment, but there are going to be some decision maker meetings that you have, quote unquote decision maker meetings, that's not going to be your goal, because you're really not meeting with a decision maker. And you don't always know that before you go in. Sometimes you think that you've got the right person, but as you get into the meeting and get to know them a little bit better, you recognize, you know what, this is not going to be a decision maker. This is not someone that's going to be able to pull the trigger and schedule an enrollment right here on the spot. So here's just some things that you can consider in making and kind of judging that whole process. one, how big of a company is it? Because if you're meeting with an HR director and the company has 45 employees, chances are pretty good that HR director can make a decision on offering a voluntary benefit. But if you're meeting with an HR director of a company with 4,500 employees, they're probably not going to be able to make that decision that day. So, longer decisions probably mean, larger companies probably mean longer decision-making processes. And so that's one area to look at. What is the title of the person that you're meeting with? Who are they? Is this an owner? Again, is it a head of HR, a VP of HR, senior VP of HR, HR director, HR manager? Again, that title can vary depending on the size, because an HR manager in a company with 30 people is probably your person. A company of 350 people may not be your person. So you kind of look at their title. And then, to me, one of the most important things, how long has this person been with the company? As far as determining whether I'm going to try to get an enrollment that day or some other kind of follow-up meeting, how long have they been there? I did a decision-maker meeting last week with a lady that had been there for 29 and a half years. Now, I didn't even have to ask her that because I found her on LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn, it tells you how long they've been there. 29 and a half years. She's coming up, the beginning of 2018 will be her 30th anniversary with the company. And she was the HR director, and they have 110 employees or so. Well, okay, those factors all mesh together. That doesn't mean that she's not going to have to get an owner to buy in. That doesn't mean that she's not going to have to, take it to somebody and get them to give it their blessing. But someone that's been there 29 and a half years, you better believe they can make a decision. So at that point, I know I'm going to want to talk about dates. Let's talk about dates. Let's get our calendars out. Let's try to schedule an enrollment. Versus if she had been there for 6 months, I may not want to talk about dates for an enrollment, because someone that's been there for 6 months, unless they're the owner or the chief human resource officer, but even in those cases, may be a little bit leery about pulling the trigger quickly in a position where they're new. And so those are some things I'm going to consider. As far as the enrollment goes, think about that. And Mr. Edwards did a great job talking about overcoming some of these objections here. But there are a lot of different enrollment settings that you're going to find yourself in. I always prefer a mandatory meeting if I can get that. But notice that sometimes there's a pre-existing and then a non-pre-existing. I don't know any other way to say that, but when they're talking about doing a meeting with their employees, my question is always, is that a meeting that you already have? Is that a staff meeting that you do every third Tuesday of the month? Is that a safety meeting that you do every Wednesday morning? Is it a pre-existing meeting? Because if it's not a pre-existing meeting, then it's not mandatory. Okay, and I don't care what they say. You'll have some decision makers that say, no, we'll pull all our employees together. Well, if they have 5 or 10 people, that might be possible. But if it's a bigger company than that, they're not going to pull all their people together just for you. And they might tell you that because they think that that's what you want to hear. And so, for example, I'll ask them, do you do any kind of staff meeting or safety meeting where your employees are all together? Sometimes the decision maker will say, we do, but with something like this, we could just pull all our employees together at a different time and let you talk to them. That way you'd have more time. And again, they're trying to help me. But in reality, I would much rather have 5 to 10 minutes in a safety meeting that's already on those employees' schedule, that they're already planning to be at, than 30 minutes in a meeting that they're calling just for me. Because again, they're going to say, yeah, we'll pull all our employees together, but then half of them won't even show. And you'll be lucky if you get half. So if it's a pre-existing meeting, I'm all for that, and that's always what I'm going to shoot for. Maybe it's a voluntary meeting. Maybe it's something where they say, no, we don't really do a staff meeting or anything like that. Well, I know I'm going to take more of a voluntary approach at that point. And by the way, anytime where it's voluntary, where they don't have to show up, if you feed them, you will always dramatically increase your attendance. And that's just a general rule. That should not come as a surprise to anyone. If we had fed you on this webinar, there'd be more people on the webinar right now. I mean, that's all there is do it. When you get food, you show up, and we are human beings that are wired like that, every last one of us. So so if you can feed them at a lunch and learn or something like that, it's going to be so much more effective for a voluntary meeting. Or is it an open enrollment meeting? Or open enrollment. And if it is open enrollment, is it going to be an employee meeting? Is it going to be a benefits fair? See, all of these, trying to determine some of this during my meeting. I'm not going to wait till the end of the meeting to ask them all these questions. I'm going to be asking these kinds of questions sometimes at the beginning, sometimes in the middle of my meeting. 5 minutes in, I'll say, by the way, do you have any safety meetings or staff meetings? As they talk about open enrollment, I'll probe there a little bit. Tell me about your open enrollment. Do you guys do an employee meeting where you get all your employees together? No, we don't. We do a meeting, we put it out there, and then if they have questions, then they come. Well, if they say that, and they have 100 employees, I can tell you about 12 of them are going to be at the meeting. If they don't make it mandatory, their open enrollment meeting, they say, yeah, if you have questions about your benefits, come on down. You can count on about 12 out of 100 people coming. So I'm going to do more of a lunch approach. Well, how about this? How about that day after that meeting? What if we sponsored a lunch that people could RSVP for? And that way, we'll back your meeting right up with a lunch and let people come in, and we'll feed them. And that gives us a little bit more time that we can go through this information with them as well. That sounds great. Most people, if you offer to bring lunch for their staff, they're going to buy into that. They're going to be pretty open to that. So I'm gonna again try to determine what is my goal here. Is my goal to actually set an enrollment? Is my goal to piggyback on a staff meeting or a safety meeting? Is my goal to just get a spot at their benefits fair? What's my goal? Because that's going to dictate my language of how I close. Again, I'm a big fan when you're talking language here of calendaring. If I can get to their calendar, then my chances of setting that enrollment are much higher. Let me just teach you real quickly a question that I like to ask there, and that question is very simple. Mr. Decision Maker, do you mind if I look at my calendar? And you know what? In 15 years, I don't know that I've ever had someone say no, or that they do mind, right? Do you mind if I look at my calendar? No one says, actually, that would be very offensive. Do not take out your calendar. No one says that. So do you mind if I look at my calendar? Now, what I'm really asking is, let's talk dates. So if it's a voluntary meeting, do you mind if I look at my calendar? Sure. Yeah, that'd be fine. Now, we talked about doing a lunch and learn. Is there a day of the week that might work well for you, like a Wednesday or a Thursday where we could do something like that? Yeah, Wednesdays are pretty good. Okay, great. Well, this Wednesday would be tough. Next Wednesday I could probably do, but how about 2 weeks from now? That would be Wednesday the 22nd. Would that work? Yeah, that sounds great. Whatever that is, now I can try to schedule that, and I've got my calendar out. We're talking dates. Again, if I can get them thinking about their calendar, they're not thinking about whether they're going to be able to do this or not, or whether it's a yes, or whether they're interested, or any of the other objections that might come up. They're just thinking about dates. Now, I noticed, do you mind if I look at my calendar? Sure, that's no problem. I know you mentioned that you do a safety meeting on Thursdays. Is that every Thursday that you do that meeting? Yeah, we do it every Thursday morning, 7 a.m. Okay, great. Well, obviously tomorrow we wouldn't be able to do. Next Thursday I could make work. What about the following Thursday? Yeah, and again, I'm shooting for a time when I'm thinking that they're going to be most likely to say yes. I think the biggest thing in closing a decision maker meeting, biggest thing in closing prospecting, getting an appointment, biggest thing in having a successful enrollment is your attitude. And again, having that confidence and that knowledge that you're helping them more than they're helping you. And you should be assumptive that they're going to say yes to an enrollment. Again, if we're talking about a decision maker, by the way, that person that's been there 6 months, that I am starting to get the feeling that they're probably not going to be able to pull the trigger, I might ask just for them to set up a lunch with their other HR folks. Or how about we do a sample lunch and learn where you pull together about 4 or 5 people here in the office, i.e. their boss, and let me come in and show you exactly how that would look with doing it for all your employees. So I may not ask for an enrollment for everyone. I might ask for kind of a stepping stone meeting. let's pull together a lunch meeting with you and some of your staff and show you exactly how that looks. That is going to be something that they're more likely to say yes to. But again, my attitude in it, I should be assumptive that they're going to say yes. This is going to help them. So when they're ready to go, you be ready to go. That's one of my pet peeves is you got a decision maker that says, this sounds really good. And the rep, because they don't want to get a no, the rep says, the associate says, well, great, I'll call you, how about 2 weeks from now, and we'll follow up. It's like, no, close them. They're ready to be closed. That's all part of that attitude and that feeling of confidence. So let's go to Mr. Edwards. Did you have any additional thoughts or insights, tips on anything that we talked about?
Well, I mean, I'm just listening to your notes here, and you're just, as always, giving amazing nuggets. My prayer is that everyone on the line will take what we're giving you and start implementing it. Like, this is something you should be doing like first thing in the morning. You know, these notes that that they're fresh on your mind, you're excited about hearing. You know, let's go to work. Now is the time for us to go to work. I mean, you know, the world has conspired for us to do good.
Amen.
You know, identity theft is now the #1 subject matter in every conversation. I don't care what you look at the news today, you're going to see some type of legal situation or some type of identity theft section. Today, just in Atlanta, they just showed on the news a young lady had her identity stolen and going through some serious issues because of her identity being stolen and linking it back to a data breach. So it's not something where we have to say to people, hey, I know you've never heard about identity theft. No, the question is, look, do you have the best thing to protect you from identity theft? I mean, that's the kind of verbiage you should be using right now with everyone you talk to. Hey, the only reason I stopped by Mr. Rich is to see if you and your company have the best thing to protect you and your company from identity theft. If you can already tell me the answer is yes, then we don't even have to have a long conversation. If the answer is no, I invite you to listen to me for 10 minutes to see if we can be a solution for you. Let me tell you how we can help. Because everyone already knows what the problem is. It's not like we got to go in there and diagnose them and say, hey, you know you got a problem, right? Let me tell you what the problem is. The problem is, no, we don't have to have that conversation. We can say, hey, Mr. Richards, I already know you have the problem that you know you have. It's called identity theft. Fastest growing crime in America. People used to say 1 out of every 3 after Equifax data breach. I say 1 out of every 2. What do you already have in place to be proactive to help you in that situation? You know, I want to go back to making calls when you're talking to the decision maker, when you might get small objection. Simple little things. Mr. Rich, thank you so much for picking up the phone, sir. Hey, before we go any further, I understand you've been a successful business owner. Is it fair to say that all of your best decisions were usually made when you had 100% of the facts? The reason I'm calling today is to get 10 minutes to come and share with you 100% of the facts of how we've been helping other business owners like you. So at the end of that 10 minutes, you can make a good decision. Is that fair enough? I promise you, I'll stick to my 10 minutes. At the end of our meeting, you're either going to say, Alistair, I'm so grateful you came by, or you're going to say, Alistair, sorry, but this is not for me. So it's very specific in saying what my objective is and what my goal is. Business owners don't want to schedule something else that they have no idea how long it's really going to take. So you need to know what your objective is, and you need to be able to tell them how long it's going to take. And be prepared to stick within that time limit. Here's what I found though, 9 times out of 10, because I've built rapport, because I've been respectful, because I've had posture, I've been finished within my time limit, but they've always wanted to talk longer. It may be about family, it may be about football, it may not even have anything to do with LegalShield, but because I respected the time that I asked for in the beginning, because in that time frame I built good rapport, 9 times out of 10 we've now built a relationship. to where there's only two things that are going to happen when I'm leaving. One, I'm either leaving with an appointment, or two, I'm saying, Alistair, it's not something we can do right now, but hey, you might want to talk to so-and-so. So I'm either leaving with an appointment or I'm leaving with a referral. And I'm always leaving with a friend. So no matter what the outcome of that meeting was, that person is always a friend. Because remember, once you've gotten the opportunity to present what it is we do, even if they don't decide on it that day, the news is going to tell them they need to call Alistair. Or because we had the conversation about people calling out and someone says, hey, I can't come in today because I got a speeding ticket. That's what Alistair talked about when he met with me 2 weeks ago. Man, I should have listened. Well, I don't want that to happen again. Guess who I need to call? Hey, now's the right time. So understand, no doesn't mean no. It just means not now. But if you take the information you were given today, I promise you, you'll get less no's. But as much as Mr. Richards and I want you to have success, we can't hold your hand. We can't go out there and do what we're sharing with you for you. The reason we're having this webinar is so you take the initiative and go out and use the information. And we're going to be hoping you guys will communicate with us in the future and let us know what the benefit of this call has been for you. But the only way you can do that is by taking information and going out there and trying to implement it. Mr. Richards?
Fantastic, fantastic stuff. So we've got just a few minutes left, folks. We do have some questions that I'd love to be able to address real quickly. And Mr. Edwards, I'll throw the first one over to you, if that's okay. This is Natalie from Georgia wants to know, when you sit down with a decision maker, do you ever ask if they currently offer a legal or identity theft product? Or I would add there, if they've ever looked at those products before.
If they currently, when it comes to identity theft, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to ask that question. I may ask the question. It may be phrased in the phrase of, obviously, Mr. Richards, you know identity theft is a big thing today. Do you currently have the best services in place to protect you and your company, or you and your employees from that situation? They may say we don't have one, or they may say we are currently using. And I may say, okay, if they say I'm currently using, I'm going to say, well, I want to share with you a service that would go right along with what you're currently using, and also a service that might be actually better than what you have. So I'm giving them 2 options. So if they say I already have an identity theft plan, there's no need for me to say, well, mine's better than what you got, because what you're saying to him is the decision you made for the one you got was a stupid decision. I'm not going to insult the business owner. I'm simply going to say, well, what we know is that 70% of the people that become victims of identity theft also end up needing to have access to an attorney. I'm so glad you were wise enough to put an identity theft protection service in place. Let me talk about how we make that whole thing complete. Meaning, yes.
I love it.
And then you can say with them, I don't know who you're using, but I'm sure they use licensed investigators. Because here's what he's going to start doing. He's going to start writing down licensed investigators. I need to check that. Right?
Right.
I'm sure the service that you have allows your employees, if they become a victim of identity theft, to have long, free conversation with an expert into regards to their situation and how it's being restored. You need to check that. Because here's what he's going to do. After you leave, he's going to go back and check the company that he has compared to the things that I say we do. And he's going to be like, well, they don't do that. And he's going to figure out who made that decision and be like, hey, why did we pick them over IDShield? But in the meantime, I'm going to say, look, I'm going to at least compliment him and say, hey, you obviously made a good decision to bring some type of identity theft protection service in, but let me show you how we complete that protection. So when the service that you're using is telling them we need to send letters, or you need to have a letter sent, I can say, hey, the good news about it is if they were partnered with our services, they could call an attorney and say, hey, this is the situation. Would it be possible to get a letter written on my behalf? See, if you only have identity theft protection from somebody else, 9 times out of 10, they're still going to have to pay for that attorney to pay $300–400 to write the letter. So the good news is by partnering with us, we complete whatever you have. And in my presentation, I'm going to let that decision maker start thinking, I really need to go see what I have to see if it is even comparable to what Alistair usually provides with his services. My goal is to get a presentation and get one of my services in, because once I'm in there, I can always upsell or add on whichever benefit it is they don't have. So if they have a legal plan already, I'm going to say, great. So obviously you don't have to worry about an attorney going to court for one of your employees if they get a speeding ticket. Because I guarantee you their other service doesn't have an attorney going to court for them for that. So, but I'm going to say it as if it does. Well, great, Mr. Riches. You already have a legal services, so obviously you don't have to worry about an attorney going to court for one of your employees should they say, look, I got a speeding ticket out of town. Because I know Shirley got a speeding ticket out of town and she had to go for 2 days to go back to court. That would truly affect your business. So that's an excellent decision that you made that choice. Let me talk to you about identity theft. So you never want to say to someone, hey, you bought something that was dumb. You bought them. You used them. Right? No, you're just going to try and weave into the conversation what your product does better than the product they already have without saying to them, hey, you know, we are better than them. Who was the dumb one that chose them? Right? That's not the conversation you want to have. You always want to leave this decision maker in a position of thinking, I always make good decisions. And one of the good decisions I'm about to make is I'm going to cancel the service that we have. I'm going to add Alistair because what he just shared with me is something we didn't have.
Yeah, so my thought is I agree 100%. If you're bashing what they've already done, what you're really going to do is put them on the defense, right? And they'll start defending their decision. Right. And now you've got them arguing for your competition. So yeah, I could not agree more. You never bash competition in general, but definitely not when they've decided to go with the competition. And they didn't make a bad decision; they just made an uninformed decision. That we do that all the time. Can I throw one more out there, and I could actually maybe offer some input on this. James from Florida wants to know, when you are prospecting and you're on the phone, do you use the term employee benefits? And so if it's okay, I'll just give a couple thoughts on that. I don't know that, again, you line up 100 top producers with LegalShield, they probably all have 100 different ways of saying, what they say on the phone, 100 different scripts that they follow or whatever. And scripts may not even be the right word there, but they have, we're all a little bit different in what we say. There are plenty of them that say employee benefits and end up with plenty of appointments. My personal preference, I like taking more of an educational approach when I'm prospecting, especially if it's cold market prospecting. So I'll mention that we do identity theft education for employees, and I want to take 15 minutes to show you some information on that, and also how we can protect your employees from identity theft. That to me is a little bit softer approach, but again, you could get 100 people and have 100 different opinions. That's my opinion. Mr. Edwards, let me maybe put you on the spot. And would you mind commenting on that? Maybe your scripting or approach when you're calling to set up a meeting or going in person to set up a meeting?
It all depends. If it's a warm market lead, I'm very specific as why I'm calling. Hey, Mr.
Right.
Richards, you're not quite familiar with who I am. My name's Alistair Edwards. But I was speaking to James, and he told me that you were the person that would make a smart decision if you came across something that would be valuable to your employees. And based on what I do and what he knows I do, he thought you'd be the person to speak to. So it's one of those where I'm like I said, here's why this call was so important for me. I don't do a lot of cold calling. So from the cold calling point of aspect, I wouldn't be able to answer that question. But from the warm market aspect, yeah, I have no problem saying what it is I do because I'm coming from a referral.
Right.
So
Yeah,
nine times
totally
out
agree.
of 10, I'm getting in based on the relationship more so than what I provide. The relationship is getting me in to show you what it is I provide. So
I
that's
love
why
it.
I'm always
Yep.
so big on relationships.
Yeah. So my thought on that is, if you're leveraging that relationship, I don't know that the language after that really matters as much, right? Because they're going to say yes based on the relationship. They're going to say yes based on who you know. But
and anytime you get a yes in any decision meeting, never walk out of there without getting 5 more names. Mr. Richard,
there you go.
let me ask you something. First of all, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come back and talk to your employees. Meaning he's already agreed, we've already agreed on times on my calendar. Can you tell me what the 2 most important things about our conversation was that made you say yes? Well, Alistair, identity theft, that data breach, that scared me. I realized I'm on it. Let me ask you something, Mr. Richards. Do you know of any other business owners or any other vendors that you do business with that 9 times out of 10 their name is on the list also, that I would be able to call and just let them know that you saw value in what we're providing and that it would be of value to them also? Because here's what I want you to understand, Mr. Richards. If you sell cars and James is your tire supplier, if his employees calling out sick because they have been a victim of identity theft or they're dealing with legal situations, that means your tires are going to get to you late. So even though that's not your business, that's your supplier. If your supplier has a problem, you have a problem. So why don't we make sure that all your suppliers don't have that problem? And would it be okay for me to use your name? See, you got to share. You got to let the business owner know why is it important for me to give you these referrals. Because if you don't give them referrals, the people that help you do business, they may shut down because their company is dealing with a legal situation or an identity theft situation, and their lack of production means that you don't get the tools that you need for you to be productive. So I usually walk out of a decision-maker meeting with at least 2 more referrals. So I know who I'm calling tomorrow. I'm calling the people Mr. Richards told me to call. And I'm using Mr. Richards' name.
And just a tip there too, if I could add, when someone's giving you a referral, take out a pen and write it down. Like one of the finest compliments that you can give someone is, let me write that down. When they're telling you something, let me write that down. That's just it'll make them feel good in general.
Nugget, everybody.
And when they give you when they're giving you a referral, I've seen so many people say, oh, that's a great thought, I'll call them. And here's what happens. They don't give you any more referrals because you're not writing it down. So let me write that down, and you start writing, and you watch what happens. They'll say, actually, yeah, let me give you a couple more. Call this guy too. Oh, think of it. And the more you write down, the more they're going to give you. So it's not just you're not relying on your memory. Your memory might be great, but it's that nonverbal communication of, I respect what you're telling me, and I appreciate what you're telling me. Let me write that down. Well, folks, listen, we're right at our 2-hour time frame, and we've spoken so much tonight about respecting time, so we're going to respect your time and go ahead and come to a close here. I just want to say thank you one more time to my friend Mr. Edwards for sharing those nuggets and that great wisdom. What a fantastic opportunity to learn from one of the best this evening, and I know I've learned a ton, and I am to attend to the webinar feel the same. And thank you to each of you for joining us tonight. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have, and again, hope to meet many of you at future events and in person, and join you on future calls and different opportunities as well. With that, God bless everyone. Thank you very much for joining us, and we wish you all the very best.
You'll have a great night.